We got spring ball in the rear view. We got the transfer portal more or less tucked into bed. I believe Pete Nakos just gave it a glass of water, told it a bedtime story. So we can look at what week 1 is going to be in the world of college football. I don't think there's a bigger game on the docket for that first week of the season than Texas taking the show to Columbus, Ohio for a rematch of the semifinals in the college football playoff against Ohio State. Ohio State, 3.5-point favorites right now. For those of y'all that are tuned in with what's going on in Vegas, essentially Vegas is saying this is kind of a pick 'em, but we're going to give Ohio State the 3 points because of the home field advantage. So we're not making a pick in this game right now, but we're going to give you a little preview, a little early, never too early preview, if you will, of this game. We'll break it down. Before we do that, make sure you are subscribed. We will have a prediction for you on this game in the future. If you want to make sure you get that prediction, the best way to do that is by subscribing. Thank you in advance for locking in. Get at me on the socials too, Instagram, Twitter, at JD Pickell. Let me know who you thinks to win this game, all right? Now, it's fitting that those lights behind me just dim down because it's about to get serious. Which quarterback meets the moment? Dare I say, which quarterback plays lights out? Because in this game, I don't think with the defensive talent for either quarterback on the other side they're facing, I don't think you can just game manage your way through this thing. I really don't. Like, maybe there'll be a time and place for that after you get past either side. But for Julian Sayin and Arch Manning, I'm going to go ahead and assume it's Sayin for week 1. It's a quarterback-driven offense, I think, for both sides. Steve Sarkisian, yes, he's had a 1,000-yard rusher, I think, just about every single year he's been a head coach in college football. But even so, we understand if you want to beat Ohio State, got to have some explosives. At the very least, you got to be timely with what you do downfield. And Texas has made their money by having those explosive passing plays with, top talent wide receivers. So for Arch now, you don't have an Xavier Worthy coming back and Adonai Mitchell coming back. Can you elevate a Ryan Wingo? Can DeAndre Moore be elevated because of what Arch Manning does? Also, can you see the whole picture clearly? Like, I know it's a different defense now with Jim Knowles gone to Penn State and Matt Patricia taking over for Ohio State, but I still think that Ohio State is going to do everything in their power to be a little bit exotic at home. Try to throw the first-year starting quarterback out of rhythm a little bit. So if Arch can diagnose it and see it and deliver, Texas is going to score a lot of points, and that's going to be a very big part as to why they win the football game, if that's the ultimate reality there. Something to track here if you're a Texas fan before we move on to the Ohio State side of things. What does Texas do with Arch on the ground? Because all offseason long now, I'm sure all the way through and into SEC Media Days, we've been talking about he's different than Quinn Ewers, most notably different because of what he brings in the run game. And yeah, there's a big part of that with the ad lib of play breaks down. He scrambles for 7 when it should have been a loss of 3. That's one part of it. But Steve Sarkisian having read option in the bag, having quarterback power in the bag, having just anything designed quarterback run now at his fingertips, how does he use that? Because we haven't really seen Steve Sarkisian have that available to him since, Keith Price at Washington? I don't even know if you can go back and watch that tape and have it transfer over to what Texas is right now. Very large element of surprise there with Arch. How much does that impact this game, especially with how talented Ohio State is at the second and third level of their defense? Now, for Julian Sayin, my question with him is, how sped up does he look? Because if you watch college football on a week-to-week basis, I know all the sickos watching this video right now do, there's a very different tempo that the good quarterbacks play with. Quinn Ewers, when he was on a season ago, wasn't sped up, very casual, knew where to go with the football, played very smooth. A better example last year, Cam Ward. Just, nonchalant king out there. First overall pick for a reason. Never once looked like he was playing with any sense of exaggerated urgency. He was playing fast, but he was never in a hurry. Julian Sayin now, being a first-year starting quarterback for the Buckeyes, how sped up does he look? Does he know what he's looking at? Does he know where to go if his first read's not there? Is he able to be comfortable in the system now with Brian Hartline actually calling the plays here? Because I have to believe, with Brian Hartline calling the plays, we all understand the point of this offense is to throw the football. Like, yes, they're going to run the football. Yes, it's going to be a big part of it. But, Ohio State will live and die with what Jeremiah Smith is in 2025. It's a pretty good way to live if you're a Buckeye fan. But in addition to that, the first part of that equation is, do you have a quarterback that can consistently deliver the football to number 4? And if it's not number 4, to a Brandon Ennis, to a Carnell Tate, to a Mylan Graham. It's an embarrassment of riches. But again, a lot of it to me starts with what Julian Sayin is and how comfortable he looks in the system. So on top of all that now, the new coordinators for Ohio State, I think, are really intriguing in this game. You have a matchup for Matt Patricia, his first game as the coordinator at Ohio State. Congratulations, you won the lottery. You got Steve Sarkisian as your opponent. when it comes to the chess match. I think it's interesting to note the talent on the second and third level for Ohio State is good enough, I think, to maybe mask some sea legs they could be gaining as a defense schematically. But up front especially, I am really curious to see how creative Texas chooses to get in the run game. Because you got some new pieces you'll be playing. C.J. Hicks moving down to edge defender, that's a new position he's going to be trying to acclimate to. I mean, Bo Atkinson transferring in from North Carolina, missed all of spring practice because of the transfer portal and how he got to Columbus. I think there's an opportunity there for Steve Sarkisian to take advantage of some potentially undisciplined Ohio State defense, if that's the case. If that's not the case and they're able to play how they're supposed to play, hey, I mean, it's blue skies and the lights are on for the folks in Columbus. We'll say that much. Now for Brian Hartline, same deal we just said. It's going to be a new experience for him calling the plays in Columbus. And I'm not so much worried about the talent they're getting the football to. We just spoke to that. I'm not worried about the talent of Julian Sayin. I'm curious to see what happens if we end the first half and Texas is playing good defense, which we expect Texas to play. But Texas is playing the defense to the caliber of they seem to have Ohio State a little bit stunned. Let's say it's 10-3 at half. Does Brian Hartline have that plan B, that change-up pitch that Chip Kelly, it felt like, made a living off of last year during Ohio State's national title run? How many times did we see Ohio State beat their head against the door for the first half, maybe the first quarter, and then eventually in that third quarter and that fourth quarter, Chip Kelly had something up his sleeve, whether it was design quarterback run Will Howard we hadn't seen, whether it was slide a hand of Emeka Egbuka underneath and like a little jet sweep action we saw in the semifinal game. That, to me, will define not just this game, but potentially how far Ohio State goes in this whole college football playoff picture, assuming they make the dance here in 2025. Now, the matchup we're going to get between the Ohio State wide receiving core, and I just named all those guys, and the Texas secondary, that is going to be NFL football in the perimeter. It will be. Now, last time they played this game in the semis, you had Jeremiah Smith go 1 catch for 3 yards. I put out a tweet the other day and said, hey, do y'all think Jeremiah Smith should be 100 overall in college football 26? Spoiler, I said yes, but had a lot of Texas fans in the mentions saying, well, I don't know if you make him 100. We held him to 1 catch for 3 yards. Understand now, was a true freshman then, no longer a true freshman now. The point being, in the biggest game of Ohio State's season, outside of the Michigan game and the Penn State game when it gets to November, as big a jumping off point as this will be for Ohio State, as crucial of a game as this is going to be for Julian Sayin making his first start, you got to have your best players impact the game as much as possible. How much does Ohio State force feed Jeremiah Smith schematically, and how successful are they in doing that? Because you don't have Andrew Makuba out there, no more Jahdae Barron out there, but you do have a Michael Taft. You do have a Gilbo out there trying to get comfortable in that new scheme for him. You do have some different pieces moving around on the back end that you're trying to Malik Muhammad out there as well. You also have some other pieces of the safety position. So there's a lot of still trying to totally solidify it and figure it out. But I think Texas, from a talent perspective, should be able to at least match up. But who wins the majority of those battles? If it's Ohio State, I think you can probably lean Ohio State in this football game. Now, if Ohio State doesn't have the success they want to have in the passing game, the cause and effect of that would be Texas's front seven at that point in time then gets to have their say on the football game. And as good as this Texas secondary is going to be, I think the Texas front seven might be the best in America. So we'll see what happens there. Now, last point I want to talk about here, both sides of this thing are revamping specific parts of their line of scrimmage. Texas is essentially replacing their whole offensive line. Ohio State not replacing their whole defensive line, but you are replacing a Jack Sawyer, a Tui Malowau, kind of the heartbeat, if you will, of what the defensive line was. That was what made Ohio State so scary last year during that playoff run. Found some grease, started cooking with it. That was the pass rush, with how often they were getting after the quarterback. When you can speed up the shot clock on a quarterback and have that freakish secondary on the back end with Caleb Downs, Igmanosin, Matthews, Devin Sanchez, the 5-star, it sounds like we'll factor in. When you can condense the decision-making time on them, it makes their job that much easier, makes turnovers that much more likely, and makes Ohio State that much more difficult to beat. So if you can apply some pressure with this new offensive line of Texas, things are going to get very, very interesting in this football game. Now, on the other side for Texas, if you want to settle Arch Manning in, it's funny, I have barely talked about Arch Manning, it feels like, in a few minutes here, and he's going to have a massive part in this game. But if you want to settle him in his first, I don't want to say true road start because he started last year against Mississippi State, but if you want to settle Arch Manning in the biggest game of his career to this point, you do what you did last year against Michigan, which was run for 4.5 yards a carry. I mean, Texas, let's say they go out there and they have a drive together where they go 14 plays, call it 80-ish yards and a touchdown, and they run the ball 9 of those plays. Think about, 1, the confidence you have your Arch Manning to turn around and hand the football off. 2, the library-like feel it would be in Columbus after a drive like that from Texas, and the confidence you would have on the Texas sideline saying, we just went out here and bullied the bully from a year ago. There's a lot there, man. There's a lot there, but either way, this isn't a sudden death playoff kind of game because of the fact that it's 1 non-conference, 2, it's week 1, so the stakes, they're high. They're enormously high, but it's not, end-all, be-all. What I would say is, for each side of this, if you lose this game, it's like running with the blister the rest of the way. Like Texas still has to play Georgia, still has to play A&M. Ohio State still has to play Penn State, still has to play Michigan. Like, you don't want to start the season off with 1 loss in the back pocket when the College Football Playoff Committee has told us from a year ago, 1-year sample size, that you can't have more than 2 losses and make the College Football Playoff. That's how it looks right now. Will that be the case on Selection Sunday? We'll see, but all that's to say, losing your mulligan very early on would not be ideal for either side with a first-year starting quarterback. So, I'm excited for this one. You're excited for this one in the comment section below and on social media, Instagram, Twitter, @JDPickell. Let me know. Taking Texas, taking Ohio State as we sit here in the wonderful month that is May in college football. Cato on the ones and twos. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.